Hi, and welcome to this discussion, this Youth Voices discussion on the team living in harmony with nature. And also thank you to the people viewing this discussion on YouTube. So I would like to get a first round of introduction of our participants. So if you could tell me your name, age, location, and what you do, that would be great. So I'm first going to ask Leah, who is up on my screen. Hi, Leah.
Hello, I'm Leah Black. Do I have to say my age? I'm older than a young person, 37, and my occupation is a youth worker and youth mentor and coach, and I'm based in Spain. Nice to meet you all.
Noha, you want to be next?
I am Noha, I'm 33, I'm Egyptian, living now in Berlin. I work in project management with the INGOs, focus on youth empowerment, and happy to be here.
Good. Rhys?
Thank you, Victoire. So my name is Rhys, I'm 26 years old. I'm currently based in northern Spain, studying an MA degree in European culture, politics and society. And I spend most of my free time dedicated to European youth engagement, specifically with European political simulations, which is one of my hobbies.
Nice. Chantal?
Hi, my name is Chantal. I'm from Kenya, 21 years old. I'm currently an environmental governance associate with the Youth Cafe in Kenya and a passionate conservationist, also working as a human rights advocate with Amnesty International Kenya. Thank you.
Good. Hélène, you're next.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm from Ghana. I'm 28 years old and I'm a youth worker with special focus on the environment, coordinating 3 environmental organizations in Ghana. Thank you.
Sami?
Hi, I'm Sami. So I'm 24, I'm French, and I'm a PhD student based in the Netherlands.
Antoine?
Hi, my name is Antoine. I am 25 years old and I live in Madrid right now, and I'm a PhD student in computer sciences.
All right. Next on my screen, you have Emma.
Hi, my name is Emma. I'm 22 years old. I'm currently in Paris and I'm studying laws, European law, basically, mostly a bit of business law as well. So that's it.
Then hi, I'm Victoire. I will be your main facilitator today on this Youth Voices discussion. I'm 23. I work for Public Value as a person responsible for Community Europe. And yeah, I'm French, but I also live in Berlin. The goal of this discussion is to convey a message to decision makers, just remind them that the youth has something to say and innovative solutions. So on the topic living in harmony with nature, as we all know, urbanization and digitalizations are going full speed. Yet reconnection with nature is a topic that the youth really cares about, as we saw with Fridays for Future movements and the rising engagement of the youth, because this topic, living in harmony with nature, touches upon many, many challenges that we have to face. We have wildlife conservation, environmental challenges, pollution, deforestation, all those problems that we now have to solve. Your Public Value just wants to help those people raise their voice and get their message across. So we have participants from Europe and Africa today, and we have quite long-lasting problem with connection. Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
I'm Noudehouenou Marcellin. I'm a research associate at the UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Center here in Lomé. I'm 30 years old.
Mm-hmm. Now that we all know each other and that we know what we are doing during discussion, maybe we could ask the first question. So I would like to hear about the main environmental issues that we are facing today. Ellen.
Okay, so you have already mentioned so many of them, but from my point of view, maybe let's just come to what we are all more common with. We have climate change issue, and as we all know, the climate has been changing over a long period of time, but then now we know that the change is moving at a more faster rate, and this is more so because of our own activities, human activities that are contributing to this. And these are resulting in a lot of consequences that we are aware of. The sea level rises, the floodings, the temperature rises and all that. So that is one side. And I think that the issue with climate justice now has got most people like hearing about climate change and the need to actually take climate action. But another key environmental issue that I would like to mention is also waste management. For here in Ghana specifically, and also maybe in other countries, plastic waste management is the issue because people are quite like have the habit of just disposing anywhere and littering around, and so we have like a problem with how to manage our plastics. No segregation, no recycling or reusing. So this is one of the major challenges that we have. So I just stick to this two, and then so everybody can add something.
Yeah, waste management is quite a challenge. I agree. Noha, would you have other environmental issues to mention?
Yes, I will speak about Egypt more than Berlin because this is most of my life. And there I know the problem is like how we take like the plastic, like Alan just said, and also any kind of recycling, any kind of garbage it's not doing systematically, and you have still people in the cities like burning garbage in the middle of the city that will cause terrible things for not only the air but also for the people around them. And still I think it's not only a problem of government, but it's still also about the awareness. People don't relate that this will affect their life. They will say like, okay, it will cost it will help with the economy of the country, but they don't relate it to the health issues or to anything. So I think the main problem in Egypt, it's more about awareness. People are now working on and like the most active approach is the circular economy, and they are trying to redo things, like reuse things, but this is like the only approach, and it's from like it's initiative from small NGOs, from the people, but not more than this.
I see. So actually it's interesting to think about environmental climate crisis as a world challenges, but yet there are like really local problems or many local issues. I see Rhys nodding. Do you have maybe something to add up on that?
Well, I think it's correct that pretty much everywhere has, you know, local issues which transcend their areas and also become potentially regional issues and then national issues, and also contribute to global issues. I think the places where I've lived, it's become very apparent that we have an issue with overconsumption. We consume too much, whether that is with regards to, for example, food, with everything that we wear or to use on a daily basis, particularly energy. We just use too much, and at the end of the day we don't need as much, and this has an indirect impact then of course on increasing emissions, in increasing our waste, and then of course contributing to the climate crisis. So for me that's one thing which is a fairly obvious statement, but has such wide implications that it's something we need to always raise.
All right. Kaba just joined us. Hi. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Victoire. Yeah.
Maybe we could talk a bit about the conservation of biodiversity, because that's a really important topic that we haven't touched upon yet. Why would it be important to have this biodiversity conserved and taken care of? Leah?
So why is biodiversity important? I mean, the answer is in itself. We are a biodiverse world, and if the chain is broken at any point, it has a massive knock-on effect. We're one with nature. You know, I used to be a wildlife conservationist before I was a youth worker, and so this is something I'm so passionate about. I always just think, what a boring world if it wasn't as biodiverse as it is, and I find it astounding that some people can disconnect from nature and not realize that we're all whole, we're all one. The food that we eat, the films that we watch even have animals in, you know, even those little things that we kind of ignore, that we've placed a lot more focus on materialism and humans instead of the absolute planet that we live in as a whole. So the importance of biodiversity, I mean, we are one with nature. That's the importance. And our medicine is due to biodiversity. Our food, our everything. We are part of this massive system. And you break that system and it will have a massive effect on us as people. So yeah, that's for me, that's the importance of it. It's extremely important.
It's true that also when you think about the emblematic animals that you have now and that are endangered, I'm thinking about polar bears, for example. I'm just picturing trying to explain to the next generation, our kids, our grandkids, well, we had these really nice bears, but they don't exist anymore because it's extinct now. Antoine, you wanted to add something?
So to me, like the conservation of biodiversity is important, like to me on one first, health-wise. I mean, like as we can see right now, like with the pandemic and coronavirus, it's totally related to our way of consumption. So the thing is, like we have like outbreaks really often we don't hear about. Is happens in the farms because there's no biodiversity. All the species are the same, and it's a way for viruses and all germs to spread super rapidly and evolve against us. And the deforestation is also a way for the species to gather and be in smaller spaces and help the viruses and just germs to spread in a way that is threatening to us. Also, I'd say like research-wise, so many species have not been studied yet by the researchers, and we're killing so many species we don't even know that could have the key for the cure of cancer or whatever. We just don't even know what we're killing. So this is something we're wasting. And last point to me will be like beauty wise. I'd say like as a nature enthusiast, it's just sad like to go out and see how things are going.
All right, Sami, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing because I completely agree, and especially I concur with the pandemic part because that's indeed why we're in that situation. But there is also one thing is that very often we see, okay, like let's not, let's say, kill all the polar bears or that kind of things, and we see that as different boxes. But no, we're in a system, and if we remove one, then it's going to have an impact on the others that are next to it, and that sometimes rely on the one that we remove to survive. So it has a chain effect, and so that's why we need to strive to protect this, to protect that as much as we can.
Yeah, it is a chain. I saw Emma nodding a lot. Do you have something to add, maybe?
I really agree on the fact that it's a chain effect. Like, for example, I grew up in an island, and 6 or 7 years ago, you had no trouble with sharks. And for some reason, some fish they used to eat, we ate too much. So there's no fish anymore for them. And for some reason, they come closer to the beach and they will have trouble with the surfers now. And that has been happening for the past 6 or 7 years. So it's really recent, and it's only based on how importantly we eat the fish in my island. So the shark has no fish anymore. So they have to come closer, and well, if they come closer, the only thing they can find is us. So that's why we have at least 5 or 6 attacks per year. So that's a lot. And that's only linked to the fact that we did not think through that if we eat, they will not eat. So we need to respect and work with them as long as we can. But like we need to respect that link that we all have, even with the animals, in order not to be chased after. So that's it.
Chantal, did you have something to add as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, biodiversity basically is a measure that combines richness and evenness across all species. And like biodiversity is important to human beings for many reasons. Ecological life support. Biodiversity provides the functioning of an ecosystem. It supplies to us our oxygen, it supplies clean air, water, pollination of plants, and basically all this are the measures of survival of human beings, and all combined brings the richness and evenness across all species. It's often assumed that maybe one factor is what's crucial, but literally all of them combined bring the uniformity and the synonymousness of the ecosystem health as a whole. So basically for the species, when they work together and so that all can survive, what we can say as communalism, therefore like diverse communities all become stable, and hence then environmental health as a whole is at par. Yeah.
I see. And also, since we mentioned the pandemic, with the worldwide confinement and the reduction of human activities, we saw images of animals going back to the city. We saw the air pollution or the quality of air getting better. So I would like to know, do you see this crisis, this COVID-19 crisis, as a chance to make a change for the environment? And if so, what do you think would be lessons learned from it? Maybe Kaba?
Yes, good morning to everyone. I'm sorry I haven't been able to join in. I hope you can hear me now. Yes, okay. So I think COVID-19 has taught us so many lessons. And for me, a major of it is that it has taught us that we share the planet with some other animals and other species who probably find our activities very harmful. Like you cited, when the globe went to some inaction for a while, we saw the invasion of several parts by several animals and other species that before then were not happening. And so for me, I think it's just an indication that there are several other animals and species we share this earth with, that probably our activity in every day is putting them at risk. And so this is just a lesson for us. And I draw this from some cultural practices in Africa, where when we grew up, we had there were some designated days that traditionally there was some inaction, and that was to allow nature to also interact and be active on its own. So people did not go to the farm, people did not go to weed. It's just a day that you are supposed to sit at home. And for me, the lockdowns that came were just something that came in that direction. So going forward, I think the globe has to probably mimic some mock lockdowns, if possible, just to allow some nature to also live and be happy. Because it showed that even though we were locked up in our rooms, we're not happy. The animals and other species were a bit excited about our absence in the streets. And so maybe going forward, we can adopt some mock lockdowns to allow other species of nature to interact.
Yeah, Rhys.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Kaba said, and I think to speak more broadly, crises such as these and times such as these create the perfect kind of opportunity to create change, because they do highlight many of the divisions that exist in our lifestyle, in our societies, and I think that's been very prevalent in the case of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, I think it's important that just like with climate justice, we recognize that this is not equal. and that many do suffer far more than others. I mean, even in Spain, where I live, in Bilbao, which is a very wealthy city, a wealthy part of Spain, it's still rather clear that during quarantine, I was very privileged to be able to sleep at night, no issues, to have food with no issues, to be able to go see and have medical services without any issues. And even in Bilbao, there are plenty of people who did not have that opportunity. There are plenty of people who do not have somewhere to sleep safely at night, some people who cannot afford to, cover their family and all of these things. And this is in a very privileged part of the world. And so I know this is going off topic from wildlife and conservation, but I think the symbolic of the potential, when we all go through shared adversity, that creates the circumstances and the platform to create more radical change. And I think this is an opportunity that, to be frank, we cannot afford to dodge, and that we have to take advantage of. Otherwise, the climate crisis and the loss of biodiversity will become irreversible.
Yes, Chantal.
I actually agree with what Rhys just said. Like over the lockdown period here in Kenya, many systems were of course closed down, but one thing that remained standing is agriculture, because we rely on food. Many people went to the village sides because that's where they can literally live sustainably without having to struggle financially. And it became a really booming issue that people went into agriculture. I mean, people realized the need of farming, people even living in urban areas resorted to backyard gardening, because it came to the minds of people that actually nature is essential, nature is important, because we're all indoors and all you can do is eat and keep healthy, So COVID-19 has taught people that agriculture is crucial, and people, especially the youth who used to think that agriculture is a dirty job, I really can't delve into that, have now seen the need of it, and yeah, it's an essential service.
Yeah, people got back to nature somehow, and just also wanted to, like in Europe, we also, in some parts of, like for example, I'm thinking about France who are forbidden from spending time with nature, and as soon as everything reopened, people just rushed to the beach, the mountain, the sea, and I think it's a nice way to reconnect with nature. Yeah, Antoine.
So I'd say the impact of the pandemic also had like biodiversity-wise good effects, like because it was said to the world leaders that threatening the biodiversity would have impact, and now it happened. They will consider, I think, the question way more. And for instance, we can see that in China, for instance, they try to regulate more like the hunt of wild animals, and they try to regulate way more the markets to prevent the propagation of any diseases. And so yeah, just now this is real. The question is way more serious and considered.
And since we are talking about world leaders, like I would be curious to know how do you feel about the environmental issues not being properly addressed or even being ignored by those leaders in big corporations? Marcellin, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, hi, hello. The issue with the world leaders, for me, I see it as it's a kind of political game. Because actually when they go on negotiation, for instance, let's take this issue of developing countries debating with developed countries. Each and everyone wants to have something from on their own. It's not like they are coming on a common ground. No, like this one, I want this. Okay, you are already developed. We also want to be developed. How are we going to get this? So this is a kind of issue they are debating. And at the end of the day, they can't somehow leave the issue to some other issue that are not really related to what it was supposed to be. So for me, what leaders, are they addressing the issue? I can't put a name on that. Because up to now, we have been going to a whole lot of negotiation, a whole lot of meeting, but up to now, we are still back. As in, I don't know whether we achieved something great. We are still struggling to face, and even look at this movement of Fridays for Future. All what I've been doing, and I see Ellen has been doing a great job in Ghana, and a whole lot of things has been going on. Yet still, we are still where we are, like nothing is happening. So I don't know. Anyway, I can't put a name on whatever is going on with world leaders. And if they were able to listen, to understand that when they came here on Earth, the way they see Earth and the way we see it now are not the same. Yet somehow it's as if they don't care. So I don't know, maybe we have to find a way to bring them to the table so that they understand the real issue. And I think what people are doing, somehow making their voices heard, it's something that can really impact. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Sami had a reaction to that?
Yeah, so for me, there is mostly two main reasons. The first one being that at some point they want to get re-elected, and who is voting? That's mostly people that are a bit older than us and that don't have the same vision as Marcellin mentioned. And by the same vision, I also mean the same interests. So for us, we see, because we know that we'll look at the consequences of the actions that are done now. We'll see them in like 40, 50 years. It's not the case for everyone. So the politicians will answer to their voting base and will try to fulfill the requests of the base, which isn't most of the populations. So that's the first element. The second element being that on the world stage, if you're the only country, let's say that you have a very, very progressive country, and that you're willing to make a change on your impact on the environment, but if you're the only country doing it, you're what? Between 1 and 10% of the world's population, something like that. It's not going to change a lot, so you're shooting yourself in the foot, and indeed, you're reducing the opportunities for development in your own country if you're the only one doing it. So it needs to be a concerted effort and with a voting base that supports it. So I think that are the two main things that are slowing down this fact.
Marcellin, did you have your hand up?
Yes, and I agree with. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the one who just spoke. But Sami, okay, sorry, Sami, okay. But the thing is, even at the local level, for instance, I've lived in Cameroon for almost 2 years, and when I was there, there was this regulation which came out saying that they are banning plastic use. But the funny thing that happened is, within 3 months, everyone came back to plastic use. So it's like we agree on something, and they agree on something without consulting people that are supposed to, those things are supposed to have an effect on. And when it started, because of their political, political gain, like they need to be reelected, as Sami just said, the regulation just goes somewhere, and it doesn't go a long way. And it's funny because even last time I was discussing with a friend on plastic ban, and I'm like, yes, if you see in most of our countries, because we are in Africa here, you see in most of our countries, they put in place regulation that ban plastic. But when you go out there, you see people using plastic. Why? Political. You cannot even understand the reasons, and someone will just tell you, for now, just leave it the way it is. When we get re-elected, we'll fix it. But still, that's where we are up to now.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Antoine was next.
Yep. So coming back to the question, which was like regarding our feelings with the world leaders' decisions. So I believe and I think that world leaders take decision regarding the influences. So basically they have economic influences, social influences, and scientific influences. So we've seen that during the pandemic that they try to balance a decision regarding all the three influences. And my reaction and my feeling as a scientist is why the scientific influence doesn't have that much weight. Like we've been, like the scientific community have been warning for a long time that this pandemic would happen, and the decision, like the economic decision, have been way more considered than the actual scientific decisions. So that's my feeling about.
Yeah. Kaba was next. Thank you for sharing,
Yes,
Antoine,
so
by the way.
yes, I think with the how I'm feeling, I like to cite a native proverb that I've heard before, that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And with that in mind, I am quite frustrated that world leaders and the people, generations that have passed, have led us to this situation in the first place. And we are now suffering from the actions and inactions of people who do not have an opportunity to influence. And so it's quite frustrating. And with that kind of frustration, I like to project the next generation even cursing us if we fail to act to curtail the current crisis. And so if we are frustrated that they are not acting, and we are frustrated that generations before us left us in this situation, then the generations that may come after us will curse us if we fail to take action today. And that is why I think movements like this and world movements that are seeking to enforce the laws and seek to get attention for the science of climate change and all of that have to be paid attention to and all. Yeah.
Ellen also wanted to say something about this topic.
Yeah, I think Antoine actually said a lot of what was on my mind. But the point for me is that it seems that world leaders actually almost all the time put economic values ahead of, or economic growth ahead of ecological values, or even social viability. And this is a shame, because we have seen with all the effects we're having from climate change and species loss, that anytime we fight against nature, this bounces back against us in a very terrible effect. So if you put the economic value ahead of nature, then that is why we are having things like COVID-19, and we are having pandemics reoccur. We try to fight against one, and then a worse thing happens because we are not considering the ecological value of things. And so it is very disappointing to have young people talking all the time, to have us trying to do our individual parts, but to have governments still going on to sign contracts with other companies, or with whoever, that is in the end destroying everything that we stand for and everything that we are trying to fight for. And so if I don't understand why so many leaders want to sign on the Sustainable Development Goals and yet act like they do not understand the whole idea of sustainability at all in the first place. Because we have all understood, even from them and from all the documents they put together, that sustainability has to consider both economics, both social and the environmental, and these are interlinked. There is no way we can achieve one without the other, and so we have to find a balance so that we attain sustainability. And so this is what leaders must think about. They have to prove to us that they understand what they signed on to, and they understand what they are asking us to do, and we understand it, we have seen it, and so they should also try to there should be the political will so that we can all achieve this. Otherwise, I don't know where we are going to.
Soon, I hope. Chantal was also wanted to say something.
Yeah, I actually really agree with what Eileen just said. And I mean, the government lays down rules, methods, policies that protect and conserve wildlife through, let's say, sanctuaries, national parks, and all that. But one thing that needs to strike is the fact that participatory governance is important. Like, it's one thing to sit in the parliament, in the Senate, and make laws and rules, but then it's another thing to involve those who are partakers of nature, you know. But most of the times, they tend to show off just because of the camera that they're involving a few youth here and there, but in the real, there's a thin line between participation and mockery. So for me, I feel like the real mechanism for corporate governance is active involvement of the owners. And who are the owners? The owners are we, the youth, you know, the partakers of the entire laws and policies, because there's really no essence of curating policies in the parliament, which really are not felt by the owners. Speaking as a youth, just like in a school setup, if someone comes and imposes laws to you, there's really no one who's going to abide. But if you put them a part of the whole decision-making process, they'll definitely go by it because it's something they agreed to and they resonate with. So I think participatory governance is a thing that should be adapted in most societies, just so that the citizens, the youth should feel a part of the process, and hence the whole sustainability circle is going to work conclusively. Yeah.
Up next was Leah. Sorry, Rhys, I saw you.
Don't worry. To be honest, what everyone has said has been absolutely inspiring and amazing. And I totally agree with what everyone is saying. I think I would love to see the day when there is actually a leader that does what we're all saying. But I mean, I've not seen this. I'm not very hopeful I'm going to see it. I hope that I do. Hopefully one of you will be the next leader and you'll start bringing these things forward. I do think, though, young people and the young generations, we have a lot of power between us. And if we all come together and take responsibility and become the voice of the voiceless, we can move more mountains than any of these leaders can. And I have a real passion for the fact that we kind of accept that we have a role to play. And I hear so many people, especially in older generations, blaming politicians, blaming world leaders. Blame and hate and anger does not change as much as it can do if there is peace and love and that coming together, that collective positive conversation. And if we all speak up positively and give solutions and answers, then for me, that could have a bigger impact than any leader, because I'm not seeing them do such. And nature always wins. Nature is much more powerful than any leader out there. And we must work in synchrony as one with nature, because when we were all in lockdown, just look at those streets, what happened? Wasn't full of people, it was full of animals. The air smelled fresher, things started rejuvenating, and we're not as powerful as we think we are without becoming one with nature. So hopefully leaders suddenly realize that. But young people, we have social media, we have a voice, we can stop this oppression on nature and people if we all come together as one big leader. So that's kind of what I was feeling.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we are going to expand a bit more on those solutions and those positive things that we can do. But before that, Rhys had something to say.
It's very similar to what Leah just highlighted. So I was going to ask, what does it mean to lead? And to me, to lead means to inspire others, to bring others together, and to take hard decisions and action in adverse circumstances. Being privileged to be involved with youth engagement projects in the countries where I've lived, I've seen leaders on a daily basis. Like, the youth are our leaders, and it sounds kind of cheesy to some because they probably haven't seen it. They probably haven't had discussions with young people and realized that actually the solutions, the leadership we need is out there. It is just being ignored. It is not being given a platform to actually take that meaningful action. So when we refer to global leaders, for me, they are not the ones who are currently elected in positions of power, But as Sami said earlier on, and as a political science student, I would like to say that very soon that will not be the case if they do not change. Quite simply, you will not be re-elected. If you are in a position of power and you do not recognize the winds of change, very soon you will no longer be in a position of power. So if it really does take the very sad discussion in our system of discussing economics and power to make change, you need to act swiftly or you will no longer be there. So listen to us now and engage with us now.
Yeah, and that's why we are here today. We want to convey the voice of future, or as you really said, the leaders of just now. So that's why I would be really interested, because we have so many inspiring young people with us, and I would really like to know which recommendations or solution you would have to conserve wildlife and the environment now. So yeah, maybe we could start with Kaba. You have your hand up. Maybe not
Yeah.
quick, but
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. I am really excited about what I've heard from all the speakers today. But what stands out for me is, I usually say man's greatest achievement, or the greatest thing we can add to nature, is science and nothing else. That God has his creation beautifully made, and all we need to do is to understand this creation and how it works. And we've had some advances in science of late, which are exciting. But I always say that we can travel to the moon and back, we can discover 100 planets and all, but if we fail to protect the very earth that we were kept on, we'll all be wiped away, and there's no doubt about that. And if we recognize this, and now science has allowed us to understand the science of climate change and how to live in harmony with nature, and we fail to do so, then we are the problem. Like it is often said that if you know your problem and you know how to solve it, and you fail to do that, then you are definitely the problem and not the problem itself. And so what we can definitely just tell our world leaders today is that they have to implement the science. We have invested in science to understand climate change and how it happens. Definitely, we need to implement the science and respect the science of biodiversity and how important it is. Development is useless until we survive, and nature and biodiversity are survival. On a personal level, I know there are certain things that we take, decisions that we take as human beings that affect how climate change and other biodiversity elements are happening. For instance, optimizing our transport. Instead of joining public transport, people prefer to get their own cars. This is human luxury, we know. But I just want to cite that there are several decisions that collectively, if we decide to take them, those actions ourselves, then the actions of our world leaders may not even matter, because we take simple decisions like dropping garbage in the sea or dropping a plastic on the road and all of that. And these are the things that are contributing to the changes we see. And we end up blaming politicians all the time. And I think that we need to invest more in simple, minute decisions that we affect our climate. And from now, I'm committed to do that. I committed myself not to take plastics in Ghanaian markets when I go to buy goods, just because I think it has an influence in climate change. So personally, I think we should encourage everyone to do such things, and we keep pressing on our leaders to implement the science so we can eliminate or stop climate change before our children and the generations that will come and curse us. Thank you.
yeah, we can act on many levels. Chantal?
In my perspective, this is gonna be kind of an odd narrative, but just as Leah said, the leaders might never even come through for us. So for me, speaking from a point of view where when I was in my university, you know, like you tell someone you're doing environmental science and they're like, oh, you guys just plant trees. That's the only notion they have about us, you know. So I feel like the ball is in our court. We, the so-called environmentalists, the passionate and conservationists, we're the ones to spread the word. Many people don't really know that there can really be a living out of environments, you know. It's really hard to find a preschool kid saying, I want to be an environmental scientist when I grow up, because we've not made it really common. We've not spoken it out as much. We are few, but we have the voice. And I think it's upon us to spread the word and make people feel that there's need for conservation, make people understand why and how. Then secondly, it's all about mindset and personal behaviors. For instance, when you're in public transport in Kenya, you just find someone tossing a plastic bottle out of the window, like it's a norm, you know. But now every time I'm in that situation, I always make sure I've at least told this person, as long as I don't get busted in my face. But you know, like one step at a time, and you tell your friend, you tell your relative, you tell someone you're with, and the culture will grow eventually. So it's a step by step, and it's all on us to spread the word, because not everyone is actually aware of these factors. And we'll blame the government forever, but they really won't do anything. So it's a one-man effort, but then combined. So eventually we'll definitely achieve the goal. Yeah.
Sami, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, it was more or less the same thing, which is that indeed we should blame politicians, and I'm French, so like I'll do it. But we shouldn't forget that indeed we can vote with our money and our actions, and what we do on a daily basis is what also is going to drive some change there, and especially what we pay for. If let's say with Kaba's example of buying plastic packaged goods or not. That's voting with our wallet, voting with our money to what we want to have produced. So that's actually a way to force companies and leaders to to just produce what we want and to drive the change in the direction that we want.
Ellen was next.
Sorry, I kept muted. Okay, so I think Chantal, it's good. I think when you have great minds in the room, we always think like alike. So that Chantal spoke most of the what is also on my mind. Unfortunately, like being an advocate and an educator of the environment and all that, what I realized is that all the topic of environmental conservation, sustainability, it remains like an elitist conversation. You'll be surprised to even some. I walked the streets of Accra a couple of I think in 2019, and did like voluntary interviews to find out what people knew about the SDGs, about climate change, about the environment. And these were like alien topics in the minds of people. People had no idea at all about all of this. Now, if we want to change society, as we say, if we want to change the minds of leaders, I think Sami also mentioned, you know, to change leaders, it is in the hands of young people, it's in the hands of electorates. And so if the electorate know that this is what is supposed to happen, if they know that this is the change that we seek, and they are empowered to know the kind of a change that they need, when they are going to vote, they know who to vote for. And they can even put one of themselves there because they know that this person stands for what we believe in. My second part is that the whole idea about environmental conservation and sustainability is actually the topic of love. Why do I say love? Because if you love something, you care for it. You care for biodiversity. You care for the future generations. So when you consume something, you think of how it will impact the next generation. If you take an action in Ghana, you think of how this action impacts somebody in Kenya, somebody in Spain, somebody in Germany. So the whole idea of sustainability just comes to the basics of love. Let's have love for the environment, for land, for fishes, for everything, and for one another. Then we can make concrete decisions every time, and we can be less greedy and just stick to our needs. And let's like not be greedy, I think.
Yeah, I had never seen it in that way, but I really adore it. Thank you for sharing. Rhys also wanted to add something.
Yeah, on a personal note, I couldn't agree more with what Chantal and Alan said. In hindsight and considering what we said in the last 10 minutes, I do feel like it's necessary, though, at least from my perspective, to underline the importance of participatory democracy and the processes that we have in so many countries. And having lived primarily in Western Europe, I can only speak about my experiences here. But what Ellen described about this perspective of elitist governance, to me, is kind of symptomatic of the broader problems we have within our system, in which it is only really possible to access and engage and participate if you do come from very privileged backgrounds, around people who have already been involved with that, if you know the right people. In spite of this, I'm a great believer in the power, for example, of parliamentary democracy. And I think the pandemic right now, even though it's not always the case in all countries, underline the importance of having select groups of people who can take very hard decisions on behalf of a large amount of people. And for me, that's very important. The reason I highlight this is this doesn't have to be at a national or global level. This can also be at a local and regional level. And this ties in with what other people have highlighted about the power of grassroots movements. And youth can have an impact at a local level. We've seen that in many cases, and also with environmental projects, with, for example, a lot of projects that have introduced things such as food forests, for example. I've seen that numerous examples in the Netherlands and Belgium that have been thriving. I've seen it with campaigns to reverse changes to diversify and decarbonize our economies and energy resources at a local level. This can have a real impact. So when people think of governance, they might think of this faraway elite thing, which regrettably is very often the case. However, it's not always the case, and you can have an impact at a local and regional level, and too often they're actually ignored in the broader scheme. So try and get involved at a local level, get involved with your local democracy. You can make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. It's a start, and it's super inspiring for others. And on this question, the last word is for Leah.
I'll keep them short. I love, again, what everyone is saying. You're absolutely inspiring me. And this might go a little bit off topic, but what keeps jumping to my mind, in fact, no, it's not off topic, it's very on topic, education. I mean, we put so much focus on maths, English, science, all these subjects that are fantastic, and science in particular, and this is very, very important. But come on, where's the education around the environment, the education around personal responsibility, leadership, all these things that are going to help change the world? So education is number one. Let's get this in the curriculum. Let's get this as mandatory and focus on building young leaders of the future. And also what I said before, don't wait for the leaders to do their bit. Let's do it ourselves. And also, if I can bring it up now, these big corporates, the big corporate organizations that have more power in most cases than leaders out there, or even control the leaders out there, what about their responsibility? And through time, I've started to realize that some people tend to focus a lot on themselves and don't think of everybody else, don't think of the bigger picture. Well, if that's the case, if you cannot change that mindset, leaders, corporates, etc., out there who are making a negative impact on the environment, then think of your own families. Think of your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, what world that you're going to leave to them. And I saw something recently, which I thought was a good way to do this. If you're so passionate about yourself and your business and your product, there's something called the lion's share out there, which basically these corporates and big businesses, those that actually care, those that want to make a good future for their grandchildren and their entire family, can invest in environmental projects to do with what they do, whether that be their logo or their marketing or their values, so they get some ownership and see their business go into something environmentally friendly. So yeah, Google the Lion's Share business out there if you haven't done it already, and think of some other things you can do.
But yeah, as we could see with all your responses, we have quite a lot to do, and leaders also have quite a lot to do. And we have been talking for quite some time now, mentioning so many inspiring topics. But before we end the discussion, I would like to get a small round of what you could actually do to live in harmony with nature now. So Chantal?
First of all, I'd like to just break down what living in harmony with nature is. I mean, I believe it's a system that coordinates with the physical, chemical, biological elements in a manner that makes life possible, you know. Through the term Mother Earth, we express the relationship of the belonging of the system and the respect for our home, you know, like Mother Nature, that's our home. So I believe it's like really necessary and very possible to actually create the ecological balance to favor both human relations and other species. A good instance would be sustainable agriculture. We are gonna conserve nature indirectly by, you know, using organic farming and such methods, but at the same time, it's actually helping us to live a livelihood. So I think it's all in our deeds. Everything we do let's look at it in terms of how is it going to benefit me, just like Leah mentioned a while ago, the Lion's Share perspective, because you think of it in your own perspective and what is it going to help me with in terms of my business, in terms of my family, in terms of what I'm doing, but then indirectly will tend to benefit nature. And nature also needs a space. So yeah, just like during COVID-19, the environment has sort of breathed and relaxed from our pressure as human beings. So it's through our actions, we can definitely give it a break more often than usually. Yeah.
All right. Emma, you're next.
I think what is really important is having the proper information about what's going on. Like, for instance, when Leah was talking about the Lion's Share, I do business law and I do a lot of society law and a lot of very bad type of law, let's just say that way. And we heard about the Lion's Share, and we also heard about how many companies will tell you they're doing it just because they know that will make sales go better. But if you look a little bit, if you get your information straight, you will see they're not doing it. And that's the same for environmental law, human rights law when it comes to business. So I think one of the best things you can do to better live and to better get in harmony with nature and with everything is having the proper information and look for it. So then you will know who to believe and with whom you can buy, being sure that what they're saying they do it. So I think, yeah, having proper information might be one best thing to do, and it's a complicated things to do, but I think it's an important thing to do. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, information and awareness. Noha?
Yeah, for me, I totally agree. If we like, for me, I do it on like a very, very, very small scale, but like the choices you take every day and how you deal with everything in your life, and to find the places where to buy things, or to use it correctly, or to do the thing that can be recycled at home. And my approach is like, if I can do it, if I can teach like my family to do it, this will be like my contribution. At least, even if it's on a very small scale, it will have an impact.
Good. Kaba, you're next on my screen.
Yeah, so I was citing just before now that there are little decisions like Noha just mentioned that we need to consciously take or not take to enhance our chances of winning this crisis. But I think personally, I have made a commitment to try and break down the conversation about climate change and biodiversity to the understanding of people who I think we've left behind, and all of us are supposed to be in play. For instance, for the past 2 months, Accra, and Ellen can testify to this, Accra has been experiencing neither rainfall nor sunshine. In the history of our country, this is very, very, very rare. We don't see that. I've never seen that before. It started in a rainy season where rains were not falling. Now we are in a dry season where there's no sunshine. And I wonder if we can connect these things to try and communicate better to people who live in an era of climate change. And I think if we do that, that can enhance our chances. Because even I spoke to one of my mentees from the northern part of Ghana yesterday, and they also complained of the fact that for the past 3 years, they either get too much rain or little rain, and crops are not yielding. These are the issues we talk about when we say climate change. And we say climate change, and it's too far, it seems too far from people, and we are not breaking it down to their understanding. I think we should use the opportunity of the current weather changes and the things that are happening around us to break the conversation down to people who maybe do not have the privilege of going to school and do not understand the big words of climate change and biodiversity and all of those technical terms. So for me, that is what I've pledged to do in society.
Good. That's inspiring. Marcellin?
Thank you. The question is actually, what am I supposed to do to live in harmony with nature, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. First of all, I think from my side, I have to admit that we need to go back to basics. When I say basic, it's like going back to what people have been doing in the olden days. That is not helpful to the earth, but also raise awareness, because not much people understand the issue of climate change. And like all the other participants said, we need to educate our friends, our colleagues, everyone, so that we all come together to do the same thing. Because unless we join hands, we might not be able to solve the issue of climate change. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Good. So we seem to have an agreement on awareness and education. Antoine?
So to me, like in order to like live harmony with nature, I join you on education. If I had like one things to do, which is not actually something easy, is like having this topic constantly in mind. Like for instance, as the pandemic, it wasn't a thing before, and suddenly it became something. It was in mind of absolutely everyone. Like every conversation like is always around pandemic. It's always on the table, and I think we should be able to do that also with the environment and those questions. So first, like staying humble, I would not say to educate people, but to educate ourselves first, and then having a gentle approach, talking about those topics like on a conversation, instead of talking like, hey, are you wearing a mask, or like being like, hey, don't throw your cigarette on the street, in the street, or talking about like the pandemic. We could talk about like the permafrost melting, or it's the equivalent. I think it's doable.
Okay. Sami?
Yeah, I don't have much more to say because I think Antoine just
Be
had the right
creative.
words. Be creative. Yeah, I can just like move out and go and build some kind of like shack in the nature in the woods. I could do that. I would then live in harmony, but would
It's a
it be
good
the
idea, actually.
exact thing I want to do? No, I don't think so. No, I think indeed we should first like before it's indeed about educating ourselves, and then try to have a conversation, and then try to pick the right solutions, hopefully.
All right. Ellen?
So for me, I think the first thing is to realize that Mother Nature has rights too. And so it's just not we humans that have the rights to be here. Nature has the right to be here. And so next time you see the insects that you, or the bird, or whatever animal you think is invading your privacy, you may as well think that you may be the one invading their privacy. You are the one invading their territory. So we need to think about this every time that we think that we have to fight against them. We should also realize this. They have the right to be here just as we have the right to be here. So it is one planet for all of us. So we better come to terms with that and try to live like as neighbors, as friendly neighbors together. And we should also realize that if we try so much to fight against nature, nature will fight against us. It's like when you are fighting against someone, the person also feels threatened, and the person will also have to stand for themselves. And so nature will do that. And so we should think about that while we are taking every action that we take in the first place. And I agree completely with the idea of education and awareness creation. I know how this is very important to create the change we want. So this is how I think, personally, we live in nature, in harmony with nature.
Great. Rhys?
Thank you. Yeah, I love these responses. Perhaps I am taking an over-simplistic response because my answer to the question is embrace nature. So I think too often we all have somewhere to be, something to do. There's a schedule, a packed day, whatever it is on our work and minds. Find time for yourself and find time for nature. And you'll find that that goes hand in hand. If we are to really care for biodiversity and for our planet, we need first to connect with it. And too often we don't give ourselves the chance and opportunity to do that. If you have the health and the geographic opportunity, especially right now during COVID-19, to just take a walk, take a break, immerse yourself in nature, you will not regret it.
Up next we have Leah.
Rhys, that was lovely. And Ellen, everyone. I'm just here smiling too much. I'm not too sure what to say. For me, I think I've been embracing living in harmony with nature for many years. And Sami, I actually live in the shack in nature. I have a little stone cottage in the middle of nowhere. And I grow my own food, and I have a forest, and I try my absolute best to conserve nature and be at one with nature. And actually, by living this lifestyle in isolation with the wildlife, I've started to see things I hadn't seen before, feel a connection I'd never felt before. And maybe it's because I'm a little bit too isolated from humans, but I'm pretty sure trees are like my neighbors right now, you know? But I think if I could just leave one word there, which is reconnect. You know, let's reconnect to our roots, reconnect to nature, and stop seeing ourselves as separate. And education, of course. Okay, that wasn't one word. Thank you.
And I'm also going to add something. I would say that in order to live in harmony with nature, we also have to consider it as our one and only home. Like, would you throw cigarette butts in your room? No, so don't do it in nature, and just care for it, because it's also for everyone to share. So yeah, just take care of it. So I have to say I'm really happy about this discussion. It was my first time moderating, and you have been an amazing group. So many really inspiring things were said, and I really hope that they fall into, like, that this video falls into the right hand and people who can help us make a change. So I would also like to thank the people who are going to watch this video on YouTube. Thank you for sticking with us during this discussion. I would like you to share this video on social media, to like it, transfer it to your friends, and if you know people who would like to take part in this discussion, or maybe would like to get interviewed for our Youth Voices project, then just please do. And it was a pleasure to have you today, this morning. So yeah, thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Victoire.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.